Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to English class. Today we're moving on to session 7 in our fantasy writing unit. And our goal today is to make intentional choices about objects and meanings in our stories. So, this is something that we've talked about the entire year in reading and writing units. And the idea is that uh, authors make choices when they write, and um, some things that come up in the story that may not seem so important may end up being important because they were choices that the authors made on purpose. So we're going to try that today with some of the objects and meanings in our own stories. So to kind of give you some examples of what I mean, uh, we're going to look at a few pictures here. So you recognize this guy. This is Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast. And you may have watched this, the real one, or the live action version, or the Disney cartoon, and you think, right, he's a candelabra, right? He's a candle. But you may you may not have thought, why did Disney make him a candle? Why isn't he a wardrobe, or why isn't he a plate? Well, his name actually means light in French. And in the story, what he symbolizes is hope, right? And we know that, a light often symbolizes hope. Like you're lost, but then you see a light and you find your way. Or the light at the end of the tunnel, right? So these are all connected to the idea of hope. And this fits in the story, right? Because this character, he's a positive character. He's very optimistic. And it all seems to work. And in one of the scenes, when Belle first leaves the when she first leaves the house of the beast, the castle there, she slams the door and then the lights go out. So it's like the lights go out and there's no hope, right? But then they come back. So this has come up in our units already as symbolism. I think you've seen this chart before. So we look at objects in our story and think about the deeper meaning that they may convey. And you've heard me say more than meets the eye, right? So in a story we read last year, there was a tree in the backyard, and the tree represented one of the characters, the grandfather in the story, right? Because the tree was kind of old and wise, and when it was cut down, the grandfather died. Colors often represent something deeper. So blue can represent calm, white can represent innocence, darker colors can represent mystery or death. In Disney movies, they say that the color purple represents either royalty or evil. So, for example, I think in Tangled, Rapunzel's dress is purple, and in The Little Mermaid, Queen Ursula is a couple different shades of purple. Green often represents envy or jealousy. Okay, in The Tiger Rising, right, we have the tiger, right, and we might ask, what does the tiger represent? What does it really mean? And as we read the story, we learn that it means it represents Rob's feelings, right? So Rob's feelings are bottled up inside of him, just like the tiger is locked in the cage. Okay, so these are the tree and the tiger. These are objects that represent something more than what they are on the surface, but also authors spend some time thinking about the words they use. So, for example, Albus means white, and Dumbledore, okay, means bumblebee in Old English. So Old English is a version of English that people used long ago, before um, before the Shakespearean kind of English that you may think of when you hear the word Old English, but it's actually older than that. And the author said that she came up with the word Dumbledore because she knew the Old English um, meaning bumblebee, because in her head, this character Dumbledore, he liked to hum, right? Like just make humming noises like a bee. And that's how he got his name. So in my story, okay, I could do some of these same things. Okay, now if you remember my story from the story arc a few days ago, um, what happens in my story is that a boy is visited by an ancient bird. Right, this bird was buried in a glacier, and the glacier has melted, and the bird hatches. And this bird has a special power that he's going to give to the boy. Um, but the bird's power is related to the boy's brain, right? So the boy is paralyzed. He can't feel anything below his neck, right? He's in a wheelchair. He can't move. He can blink his eyes. And he can talk. That's it. Um, so while I'm thinking about the name of this bird, right, I wanted to connect to the bird's ability. Like it's going to do something to the boy's brain um, to give him some power. All right, so I chose the name Nora. Okay, and not Nora like Nora. Right, I'm not going to spell it like this, which is the common way to spell Nora. I spell it Nura because I wanted to connect to words like neurology or neuroscience or neurosurgeon. So I want the name to connect to the word brain, right? And that's what it does. So that's a choice I made. It's not a random choice, right? It's intentional. It's something I'm thinking about. Um, Also, in my story, um, one of the ideas that my story will include is global warming and the melting of glaciers, right? And in the story, I will try to show how the glacier, right, and a melting polar ice cap represents the melting or the falling apart of society, right? So here I am this is in the beginning of my story. I'm talking about the glacier and where Nora comes from. But I chose the glacier and this, melting ice, because later in the story, I'm going to talk about and convey the idea of society is kind of crumbling and melting like a glacier, right? So these choices I make, they're intentional, right? Because I want to convey a deeper meaning, right? I want people to read it once and understand it, and read it twice and understand it even more in a deeper way. So as I go through this, like I'm thinking hard about the names of my characters, the objects that come up in the story, and these are the things I want you to try to do today. So as you revise today, I want you to look for things in your story that might represent something deeper than what they are on the surface. Okay, so um, as you go through, one of the things you might do is just highlight the different objects, the places in your story, and then ask yourself, is this going to work? Can this connect to the deeper meaning or what my story is really about? Maybe I'll change my setting a little bit so it connects to the feeling, the mood, or the lesson that I want to share in my story. Okay, so give this a try today, and I'll see you inside your documents and see how you're doing. Okay, so good luck.